I'm John McCulloch of MaRS Discovery District, and I'm joined today by Paul Chipperton, CEO of Profound Medical, and Damien Lamb, Managing Director of Genesis Capital. The reason we're here today is to discuss the recent $9.4 million Series A round invested in Profound Medical, definitely a hallmark financing in the life sciences sector here in Ontario. So Paul, first of all, this is definitely, I think, a very significant investment given the status of life sciences sector over the past 3 or 4 years. Could you share some of your comments on it?
Looking at the data, I think that the Q1 2011 total investment pan-Canada in life sciences was rather low, 12.5 million. So we've essentially doubled that for the whole nation in the last week. I think that is also an indication that we're probably at the bottom of the investment cycle, and the venture investment cycle, and hopefully we're the first of some good news coming out for the remainder of the year.
Damien, you've got a fairly long association with Profound. You had provided some seed capital previously, I think 2008?
Yeah.
Yep. And now, of course, you're one of the major investors in the current round. So what is it that attracted you to Profound, and what are you hoping to see as a result of this investment?
Well, I mean, anytime we look at transactions, especially at the earlier stage that we do them, and Profound was certainly one of those. It was a spin out from one of the research institutes locally. You know, you're looking at 3 different things. You know, the technology, the potential market, and the opportunity to exit the opportunity. And in the case of Profound, it was relatively easy to sort of take a look at those 3 buckets and come up with compelling reasons to act. I mean, when we looked at prostate cancer and how it was currently being treated, you know, we determined that 50% of the patient population was being either not treated at all or being inappropriately treated with the state of the art, and that suggested to us, you know, a relatively significant market opportunity. And then when we looked at the exit opportunity, we looked at the sort of 3 major vendors of MRI technology, and as you know, Profound is a system that uses ultrasound ablation using MRI guidance. And it struck us that, you know, being in the capital equipment game, especially in a slowing economy, was probably not something that was ideal. And if you could take a technology like Profound and add it to the table and have a disposable component in one hand, but also a therapeutic intervention on the other hand, that was going to be a relatively compelling message to potential acquirers. So that was relatively compelling too. And then the third sort of stool or leg of the stool we looked at was, you know, will the doctors adopt this? And that's some combination of patient outcome, which, you know, in our view was, you know, equivalent outcomes from a prostate cancer treatment perspective, but also improved side effect profile. And, you know, can they make money doing it? And there was a significant amount of money in our view that was going to be on the table that could be divvied up between the MRI vendors, the physicians, and combined with better patient outcomes, we thought it was a relatively compelling opportunity. So we did the $2.5 million seed round. We did another $2.5 million in the Series A, and we're hoping that this will drive the product towards proof of efficacy over the course of the next 24 months.
If I can add, the premise or the multiple premise that Genesis invested on has actually been proven out quite strongly over the last 3 years. There's been a quiet but ultimate recent revolution in urological circles saying that the existing technologies to treat are not good enough, and people are saying that out there loudly now, that the current paradigm for detection PSA is suboptimal, and that even the HIFU-based technologies, which we are not one, but the HIFU-based technologies have literally pulled the plug on FDA approvals in the last 6 to 9 months. So add to that our strategic relationship with Siemens, and we are getting clinical advisory board members that are eminent. We've got an eminent leader in the MRI space, and the market is ripe for adopting our technology. In fact, one of the biggest challenges we're going to have at our board meeting next week is our strategy for US has been consistent and I think very well targeted and developed nicely. But we're getting an enormous amount of pull from Europe at this moment in time. France, Germany, the UK are actively lobbying us to go and do clinical trials over there, and we simply now need to manage our cash and our regulatory strategy and commercial strategy to hit the appropriate milestones to exploit that and potentially exit as well.
Speaking of clinical trials, when do you expect that you'll be able to enter the clinic?
Well, as I just mentioned, we've got two major institutions in the US that have been with us on a confidential basis for over 15 months now, and so the next stage is to go to their institutional review boards at these two places in the US, and get IRB clearance and do a final preclinical set for the FDA, and then we expect to be moving into clinical trials in the US next year.
Now, Paul, in regards to this funding round, in the early part of 2010, we introduced you to a European investor. And what happened from that point on?
That was actually a really good experience. We came, I think the MaRS portfolio of companies were vetted by the potential investor, and then those that had a decent fit were invited down. I gave I think a 20-25 minute pitch to a French group, and I wasn't really expecting much to come out of it, but put the usual amount of energy and enthusiasm in it, and we got a strong reaction from them. We got an invitation to go over to France. We spent a couple of days pitching over there, and they did a great deal of diligence. So it was a completely unexpected and good experience to reach out to European financiers with money that we wouldn't typically have had any chance of getting through to.
And that the European firm was obviously anxious to find a domestic partner that they could work with in the deal.
They were, and I think one of the, I think they were very close to co-investing. I think one of the issues was the timelines to close, which were getting, to be frank, longer and longer, and less to mine and Damien's liking as time went on. But you know, that's business. A lot of negotiation takes a lot of time, and I think they were ready to act then. And as a consequence, they chose to reserve their position. However, I understand that they're still looking at deals over here in Canada and through MaRS. So I'm looking forward to hearing them do one.
Yep, we'll get them in the Series B.
Yeah.
Damien, could you just outline who were all the investors in the current round?
So there was ourselves. BDC was the largest investor, so they co-led the round of financing with us. There was an undisclosed investor who I think will disclose, in the next few weeks. That came from a government pocket, and there's, I guess, some sensitivity around when and how they disclose. And then we had the HTX fund, which is a repayable loan type thing. So the equity component of the financing was about 8.7 or so, and there was another 750 in the repayable loan component from HTX. And then I suppose there was a small investor, the Queen's Tricolor Fund, that we had brought in. We have a relationship with the Queen's Fund, and they kind of like to tag along. So not a huge investor, but they did participate in this round of financing. And then if we continue forward, there's another couple of investors who have expressed an interest. So this round probably could end up around 10.5 or so over the next maybe 3 months if we end up bringing those groups in.
Paul, what are some of the short-term activities that are going to result from this financing?
Well, we proceeded with an expectation that we were going to close. We have advertised already 10 new appointments for Profound. I think we posted them on the MaRS website, and we've had over 250 applicants at this moment in time, which is quite a lot. We've gone through them as diligently as we would if we'd had the money already, and we expect to make 5 offers this week, and expand the current footprint and number of people in the company by as many as 15, all BScs, MScs, and PhDs as well. So it's good for the local economy that we're picking up a lot of very talented scientists as well.
Excellent. Now, I think as you'd also mentioned, Paul, for the past 3 to 4 years, the state of life sciences investment in the province of Ontario has been pretty grim. Very little investment. It's pretty bad everywhere, especially in the United States, which is the bastion of life sciences investment. They've seen major setbacks, but in Ontario it's been particularly acute. So this is the first time in a long time we've seen a Series A round of any significant size in this province. So do you both believe that this marks the beginnings of a change? Is it the foothills of a recovery?
I'd like to think so, and I'd like to hope so. I participate here at the MaRS CEO peer-to-peer event, and there's 5 to 7 others like myself who are currently looking for financing or additional financing. And while in the broader sense that biofinance tomorrow, there may be a sense that things aren't picking up, but at that CEO peer-to-peer thing, I'm getting a strong indication that at least the shoots of recovery are coming. Those in the room are all looking for significant amounts of financing. And while none of them are literally jumping out of their skin saying, yay, I've got 10, 12, 15 million, there's sources of financing for all of them. Some are looking at angel, and some are looking at industrial. I think Damien's probably best to speak about the near future of venture capital, though.
Damien, in your case, you invest throughout Canada and also United States also. So how does Ontario look to you as a province for deal sourcing?
I mean, I think the source of deal flow is still relatively strong. The challenge is who's getting financed and who's not, and obviously there's a lot less being financed than there have historically. Now, to those raising money, that's a bad thing. To those deploying capital, not necessarily. So, I mean, the reason we have less capital, the reason we've seen attrition of the GP pool in Canada and globally, for that matter, is a lack of performance. And that lack of performance was driven by too much capital in the pool. We've probably seen attrition of 50+% of the GPs in the venture capital pool in the last 5+ years, and I think that's probably we've bottomed out on that front, and now we're going to see a stabilization. And it's not that there isn't money in the pool. What was happening was a lot of people were actually sitting on their capital, and I think now that we've seen the worst of it and things have sort of bottomed out, you're seeing people start getting back into the game and saying, okay, well, I do have capital, I better deploy it, so where do we deploy it? And that was very acute in that sort of September 2008 through probably the fall of 2009, as the capital markets created and the global financial crisis set, and nobody was spending money on anything, be it venture or otherwise. So everybody was sitting on their money. I think, the last 18 months or so have seen that thaw a little bit, and I think good opportunities like Profine and a few other companies out there will continue to be financed. But the reality is we financed way too many companies in the past, and that's probably a thing of the past, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I mean that is also something that's very apparent from the MaRS perspective. We've quite a large number of life sciences and healthcare companies we work with. The ones that are the best organized have the strongest value proposition and have people involved in the company who can create investor confidence. Those ones are getting some traction now. There are both on the partnering side and also the investor side. It was certainly the case, no doubt about it, historically, that I guess a lot of companies were founded on technology push with very little business foundation behind them, and those ones are generally faltering. But Paul?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, that said, it's still a slog. It's not. I've been involved in companies across northeastern US, Canada, Europe, and this has definitely been the toughest time. No two ways about it. And if I could wish for one more thing over the last 3 years, I would like to see, because there's big pools of capital in OVCF and OETF, and I would like to see a larger and more energetic engagement or facilitation between those companies that need financing than those big pools of capital. I don't think
would that be in some ways facilitated by changing the eligibility requirements?
I think in some ways, yes. Yeah.
I think part of that too is you got to give marks to the government for stepping in and trying to help. Absolutely. The reality is it takes them so long to know and understand what it is they're trying to accomplish that by the time they get there, sometimes it's the market's starting to turn anyway. So, I give them full credit for making the effort, and we have been the beneficiary. I mean, Profine was the beneficiary of a couple of those different stimulus exercises that went on, but the bigger pool, and any time the government puts big pools of capital in place, they tend to be more stringent as far as their entry criteria and what you have to do and what hoops you have to jump through, and it takes it's a long iterative process between them and the capital markets, the private sector, to make sure that those funding vehicles actually do work for us, and I'm hoping that we're starting to see, for the first year of some of these programs it was very difficult. Now it's starting to loosen up a little bit, and I think they understand that if they actually want to see them go to work and have the effect that they were hoping them to have, they do have to be somewhat responsive to the private sector's needs. So, and
again, being fair and balanced, HTX were great. The diligence process was extremely thorough, extremely deep, start to finish, 3.5, 4 months, and there's a nice vibe with that team. They certainly appreciate and understand the startup environment, and act in a relatively entrepreneurial way themselves. So it's good to have a like mind to talk to on the other side of the table for that. Well,
they're all guys that came from the private sector too, right? So I mean, it's not like taking a bureaucracy and then trying to make it work for whatever outcome you're trying to get. It's taking a bunch of guys that were in the private sector, sending them out and doing round tables with the community, and then putting a program in place that works for everybody. And HTX has done an exceptional job at that.
Absolutely. And Paul, you've been a very familiar face here at MaRS over the past few years. We've had you speak on numerous occasions. You're active in the CEO peer-to-peer session and so forth. And I think you've also, correct me if I'm wrong, used some of the embedded executive support. So these, in contrast to HTX and some of the other agencies in Ontario, I would say that what we are doing is pretty much everything but the money,
right?
To make people fundable. And from your perspective, how important would you say that is for the emerging companies here? Certainly,
the CEO peer-to-peer initiative is a really good one. It's good to sit around with other people and go, how's it going? Where are your sources of capital? People are finding them from different areas, and you just share them in a group. So that's been, I think, extremely useful. And the other thing is that I think because we're going through this regeneration period, a lot of the newer CEOs and executive managers, even though there's not a lot of cash around, because there's not a lot of cash around, they're actually listening. One of the guys I was speaking to doing a presentation 2 weeks ago afterwards, and I knew him from the peer-to-peer, he came up and said, you know what, I think I need to appoint a COO. I need someone who can take care of the operational while I spend all of my time trying to get the money. And I think there's progressive and active learning going on, and MaRS is facilitating that, a lot of that at the moment.
So I'd just finally like to congratulate you on a fantastic round, and thank you, Damien, for helping provide it. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks.